Hi, everybody. Welcome to part 2 of lecture 3 on the signs and the houses. I have no idea how many parts this is going to be. In part 1, we covered Aries through Gemini. It was like a 2.5 hour long video. If you've made it this far, I assume you've already watched that first leg of the zodiac. I hope so, because the zodiac is a narrative that builds upon itself, right? And I was going to talk about the narrative, but I guess we can do that when we get into the chart. But, you know, the spark of life of Aries is birthed from that cosmic womb of Pisces, that cosmic soup of it all. It really comes into physicality, back into the mother, the vessel of Taurus, this earthly realm. And then from there, we enter Gemini, that realm of consciousness, that this spark of life in this earthly realm gives us the ability to develop. And then throughout the rest of the zodiac, we are developing that consciousness here in that realm of duality that Gemini very much represents. So we're going to be picking up at Cancer, and we'll see how far we get. I know this is still going to be multiple parts, but I want to have them be like, roughly like 2 hours long, and then we'll see how long it takes to get through the signs. And then hopefully I can do the houses all in one video, but we'll see. It's more information. If you're here, I assume you like my work, which is always very long-winded, long format. So, all right. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we will hop in. Oh, there is my crazy desktop. Definitely, you guys were not supposed to see that hot mess. Whatever, I know all the Patreon people have seen it before. I can't put things in folders, or I can't find them or remember they exist, so like everything's on my desktop, but my desktop is so full with like client work that needs to really just get deleted, that things are like on top of things. It's kind of crazy. All right, so let's go ahead and make this full screen. So in the last video, we talked about this first quarter of the zodiac, right? This initial spark of the individual, and the really solidifying that into physicality, right? Into the realm of duality. All right, let's pick up in Cancer. All right, so Cancer is, like Aries, one of the cardinal signs. All right, so we've made it through all of the modalities. Aries was a cardinal sign, Taurus was a fixed sign, and a Gemini is a mutable sign. Aries sparks not only the start of a season, which all cardinal signs do, Aries being spring here in the northern hemisphere, but it also sparks the start of the zodiac, right? Taurus, that fertile soil of Taurus, is the fixed sign that sits smack dab in the middle of spring, and really channels that steadfast energy. And then Gemini is a mutable sign. It's our first mutable sign, and it's shifting into something else, right? In this case, it's shifting into summer. Cancer marks the summer solstice and the start of the zodiac. So we have to keep going back to this chart. I mean, it's not really super convenient how this is set up, but whatever. So we have the equinox here, that spark of life, that cardinal sign that starts the season of spring and starts the zodiac and enters us into Aries season. That fixed energy here in Taurus, really solidifying that spark into physicality. And then Gemini, that mutable energy that is really shifting into this conscious space, right? Here at the solstice, right at the end of Gemini, is where we have the pole star. It's at 28 degrees of Gemini, inching closer and closer and closer to Cancer. It will make it into Cancer, that cardinal degree aligned exactly with the solstice in 78 years. We're going to talk about this more when we get deeper into the zodiac. I have several dates mapped out when we get deeper into this PDF. Okay, but now we're picking up here in Cancer. We're in this second quarter of the zodiac, the second half of the bottom half of the chart. This bottom half very much represents the development of the individual persona and psyche. Once we enter into this top half of the chart, it's really where we start to merge with the outer world. So we're still very much developing our inner world. Cancer being the sign that is associated with our innermost world. This bottom of the chart, if this were your natal chart, and we were looking at the houses as opposed to just the signs, right? This axis here represents our IC. The Cancer governs the fourth house. Both of those signify our inner self, our inner world, our subconscious, our innermost reality, right? So let's pick up in Cancer. You might have to come back to that chart like a million more times, but you know, it's easy. All right, so Cancer, cardinal sign, it starts summer. It is a feminine sign. It is of the yin polarity. It is of the water element. It is very psychic. It is very intuitive. It is very plugged in, but it is initiatory because it is cardinal. So this is where, you know, Cancer very much gets its gut instincts from. This is where intuition really gets those instinctual instincts from, is from that cardinal expression, which is very initiatory. All right, so here's a quote from Robert Hand on Cancer. It says, Cancer completes the development of the individual as an individual with the unfolding of the emotional faculties. It does so by putting one back in contact with one's source, their roots, the ground spring of all being. Cancer is not merely feeling, it's feeling part of something. Where Gemini is an intellectual awareness of relationship, Cancer is an emotional awareness, too deep for simple rational expression. Particularly, Cancer is awareness of relationship to the past, one's childhood, one's family, especially the mother, community, and even our homeland. It's really where we plug into our ancestry, our lineage, our roots, right? Cancer is not so much an awareness of one's relationships to other individuals in general, that it is the function, that is more so the function of the air signs, right? Gemini really associates us with like our siblings, people in our early education, you know what I mean? Libra very much associates us with like one-on-one relationships of all kind, whether it be romantic partnerships, business partnerships, even enemies, any sort of one-on-one dynamic. And Aquarius is where we reach out to that group dynamic, right? All right, so Cancer is governed by the moon. In the next, not the next video, but in the next lecture, in the next module, we'll be covering the planets more in depth. But the association with the moon is really where Cancer gets a lot of its archetypal expression, that of emotions and the subconscious, the fourth house as well, you know, very much associated with that inner subconscious, reflective, moon mirror-like dynamic, right? So the moon is the planet of emotions, of the subconscious, of the mirror, right? It mirrors the sun back at itself so that it can see, right? That's what a full moon is. That's what any of the light shined on the moon is the sun's light being reflected back down to us here on Earth so that we may see ourselves, right? Much like the subconscious is a reflection of the conscious and vice versa. The moon is associated with our instinctive responses, right? A lot of that comes from that cardinal energy. It's associated with reaction, with the feminine principle, with the protective instinct, as is Cancer, very, very much so, with our natural habits, our changing mood, our imagination, our feelings, our reaction, our psychic impulses, and the mother. So any part of our chart that is governed by Cancer, whatever house is governed by Cancer, the ruling planet of that house is the moon. If you are a Cancer rising, your chart ruler is the moon. And so you can expect to have these like ever changing moods, these shifts, right? These impulses, much like the waves of the ocean, the tides. Cancer very much being associated with the ocean and the moon literally controlling those tides, much like it controls our emotional body. Okay. So Cancer is associated in the fourth house is so my internet has been glitching. I'm really hoping that Zoom works good and this all records good. I'm hoping, but it does look like I'm lagging a little bit, but it hasn't glitched and I haven't gotten anything popping up on my screen, but here's to hoping it's recording good at least. All right, so Cancer and the fourth house are associated with the home. They're associated with the subconscious mind, with our sense of belonging, with how we are in private, our innermost reality, right? Our early life trauma and our conditioning, the foundations of our subconscious psyche, as well as the later years of life. So Cancer very much, and the fourth house very much governs our early life and programming and the later years of our life. These are our psychological foundations, like I just said. Our parents, particularly the mother, right? The moon, it's not surprising. Although some astrologers say that the 10th house is associated with the mother and the fourth house is associated with the father. I was actually talking to Amanda about this the other day. So, grain of salt. There are so many different things that can be simultaneously true. The fourth house in Cancer is associated with our heritage, with our traditions, with our homeland, with our domestic life, issues around the home and family, one's sense of belonging, which looks like I wrote here twice, how one is in private and our hidden motivations, one's need for emotional security, and the need to support or nurture others. Okay, here's another quote from Robert Hand. He says, if Cancer did not manifest, everything would be purely functional, rational, cold, and dead. In fact, today's breakup of the family and increasing reliance on the state, i.e. Capricorn, the opposite sign to Cancer, This reliance on the state for the care of the young, for the old, for the sick, represents a trend towards the destruction of those Cancerian, those motherly elements, necessary for social cohesion, necessary to be human. It should be noted that astrologically speaking, Gemini is a more primitive function in the development of the individual than Cancer, because Cancer comes second. Cancer is well, as we will get into here in the world, Cancer is associated with the opposition to government. Capricorn governs the control systems of authority, the government, right? The state. And Cancer sits opposite it. So a lot of people will think of Aquarius as this revolutionary, right? And Aquarius is governed by Saturn too, like Uranus, but Saturn. Aquarius just governs a weird state. It governs a weird futuristic new world order reality. Cancer governs the opposition to government. It is the home, it is the mother, it is our early upbringing. This is the opposition to the control system, to the state. And this is what they're trying to destroy, right? These traditional foundations that dictate our subconscious. Like, what better way to brainwash and program the masses than to get them very early on when they are developing their psychological foundations? It's fucking brilliant. Brilliant mad scientist move, right? Attack the family and you attack the opposition to your government. All right, so in the world, in a mundane sense, Cancer is associated with the common people. It's associated with mass ideologies, particularly traditional mass ideologies, and our national sentiment. It's connected to the United States because the US is a Cancer born on July 4th. And like right in the middle of Cancer, really, it's like right smack dab in the middle of Cancer, their sun. And like I said before, it's associated with the opposition to government. Agriculture, because of that connection to the land, our roots, right? And produce of the land, all right? So in the body, Cancer is associated with the womb, the mother, right? It's associated with the chest that holds the heart, which Leo governs, our next sign. Cancer is associated with the mother, and Leo is associated with the child. And so we have the womb, Cancer, and the child, Leo. And we have the chest, Cancer, and the heart, Leo. They are hand in hand. You can't have the child without the womb. You can't have a heart working in a functional manner without the chest to hold it, right? All of the feminine signs very much speak to being containers. Taurus gives Aries that container to manifest within. Cancer gives Gemini that same container. It gives that conscious mind that ability to reach the depths, right? Okay. So it's associated with the womb, the chest, the breasts, the digestive system, and our ovaries. Herbs associated with Cancer are flaxseed, mushrooms, olives, pumpkin, and white rose. Okay, this energy is kind. It's, unless poked, it's like a mama bear, right? It's like a cuddly mama bear, but like not that they're innately nice, but you know what I'm saying. It's like a teddy bear that, if provoked, will turn into a vicious mama bear at the drop of a hat, right? But this energy is very kind and compassionate, and protective and sensitive and sympathetic. Very imaginative because they are so connected to the inner world, right? Which is ultimately a reflection of this whole thing we are doing here. Um, this energy can be very maternal or paternal. It doesn't matter if you are male or female, but it has that energy of like nurturing, of caring for something, anything really. This energy can be very cautious, particularly if their loved ones are involved, because they their number one goal is to protect and to nurture those they care about. Even though this energy is the opposition to government, because it is rooted in tradition and the homeland and your roots, it can be very patriotic. This energy is resourceful and nurturing and extremely psychic if they can get their emotions in check, right? Because they're constantly being pulled by the moon's ever-changing cycles. It changes signs every like 2.5 days, so you're constantly on to some other energy, right? This energy is very psychic. It is the mama bear. They're home oriented, overly emotional, oftentimes hypersensitive. They can be very moody. The energy is changeable. It's unstable. It can often be unforgiving and gullible, but not if they are like rooted in their intuitive gut instinct. Then nothing can get past them because they are so plugged in to those like minute like avenues of information that you can really only get from those like instinctual intuitive impulses that really speak towards the moon. The ruling planet of Cancer is our closest psychic body. It's the closest planet to Earth. It's the first thing to speak to us are these gut instincts, and they very much manifest through Cancer, right? They can be very intuitive, very instinctive, and deeply spiritual. This sign builds the home and the family. It needs to find balance between powerful emotions, strong imagination, and intuition. When this happens, literal magic occurs. They can be unstoppable. The need to protect the self and the family from threat is of utmost importance. Cancers have remarkable defense mechanisms. Think like a crab. They have that shell that's literally their home and is protecting them from harm, right? They're highly responsive to the moods of others, and they even can reflect them back at them because of that very reflective lunar influence. Although they can be very easily wounded by imaginary slights, right? They can read into things that aren't necessarily there because they're kind of reading into their own subconscious being reflected back at them as well. So Cancer governs the chest, Leo the heart, Cancer the womb, Leo the child, like I said before. So in this tropical sign, we have Sirius, the brightest star in our night sky. It sits at 14 degrees of Cancer, smack dab in the middle. It's something we will talk about when we get to the fixed star section. But this star is known as a guardian. It's known as whether it is associated with Isis, the divine mother, who is the guardian of the mysteries, the guardian of the veil, or if it's associated with the dog, Canis Major, the constellation it is a part of, or any number of the myths tied to it. It is always associated with guarding the other side, being a guardian to the goddess, a guardian of the veil, right? Sirius, the brightest star in our night sky, is the first star beyond our own sun that starts to initiate us into cosmic consciousness. It's the brightest one in our night sky. It's the first one that draws us to this great beyond, and it draws us to that through our subconscious, through our inner world, right? Through our intuition, through our innate feminine senses, right? Through the mother. We'll talk about Cancer much more when we get to the fixed star part of this whole thing we're doing here, this course. So esoterically, Cancer is associated with the fourth sign of the zodiac. The Orphic teachings see it as the threshold through which the soul enters upon its incarnation. It is governed by the moon in the performance of its symbolic role as mediator between the formal and informal worlds. As you see when you look through this PDF, some signs in this dictionary of symbols book that I'm citing have really long descriptions, often the masculine polarized signs, the air signs, the fire signs. It is written by a man in the 1920s. Maybe it was the 1930s, maybe it was 1960s. Okay, hold on. Now I have to just no. I wrote it down at the bottom of this PDF, but we're not scrolling all the way down there. 60s, the 60s. Oh, that's this edition. I thought it was older. I think it might be from the 30s, but this one was printed in the 60s. That's written by a man. So the masculine signs, he really has a lot to say about. But a lot of the feminine signs, they don't really get much. He's like, here in Cancer, he's like, yeah, it's the fourth sign, the zodiac. It's a threshold. Souls come through here. You know what I mean? Upon their incarnation. And the moon, it's a mediator. That's all I got to say about this. You know what I mean? This area of the chart, really, it's kind of the cusp, that point of the chart. Here we go again. This cusp here of Gemini and Cancer, this solstice point, really. Sometimes the sign of Cancer, and oftentimes, and sometimes the sign of Gemini, this area of the sky, depending on who's telling the story, is oftentimes referred to as the gate of man, because it's believed to be that where we incarnate from, where we incarnate through, right? Cancer, it makes sense. We incarnate through the womb, through the mother, right? This area of the chart, and this is aligned with the pole star, okay? This area of the chart here, Sagittarius, and not really Capricorn, but more so Sagittarius to the Galactic Center right here. And the solstice point is known as the gate of God, or sometimes the gate of the gods. It is believed to be where we kind of reach that pinnacle point. Here, as we discuss the zodiac, we'll talk about how from Aries up through here, we are really developing the individual. Now, Robert Hand says that the individual is fully developed through its emotional faculties here in Cancer. But as you see, as we continue on, the individual continues to develop. In Leo, we enter the realm of ego. In Virgo, we really do kind of start to enter the realm of others through acts of service. Then out here is where we really start to reach this outer world and develop through the mirroring, transformational, expansive, exploratory process of developing the individual, of the individuation process, which comes to a peak here at the top of the chart, which is said to be the gate of God, or the gate of the gods, which aligns with the Galactic Center, the gate of man here, the gate of the gods here. And then from here, we experience the flood, or sometimes I call it the backside of the mountain, right? We're climbing to the top of this Capricorn mountain. And then from here, we're in what's known as a dissolution process, where we are slowly dissolving and merging back with the whole, merging with society, merging with the collective consciousness, merging with the collective unconsciousness, and that Akashic whole, right? But this is the peak of it all, that gate of the gods, the peak of the development of the individual, your consciousness. All right. All right, so here, somewhere on here, no? Oh, this is supposed to be what's it called? Hyperlink. It's for you to be able to go watch this video if you want to watch it, but it's not a hyperlink. So I will try to fix that for you guys. Let me write that down. Hopefully some of the hyperlinks work because I have multiple. All right, so Cancer represents our subconscious mind, right? It very much represents our inner world. And I have tied it in the past to the labyrinth, right? This like labyrinth of our mind, this labyrinth of our subconscious, and this path to the center. Okay, so we're about to dive into my research on the labyrinth. This is from a fabulous book called The Labyrinth, Symbol of Fear, Rebirth, and Liberation by this guy. Cancer very much represents this spiraling into the center, or the kind of like losing yourself to your inner illusions. I just want to kind of point something out really quick here. All right, so here we have at the tail end of Gemini, we have that pole star, right? We have pulled the pole star at 28 degrees of Gemini. It is slowly inching closer and closer and closer to Cancer, about to cross the cardinal degree, entering into Cancer. The pole star very much represents the center. It is literally the center of all of the stars, and everything rotates around it. It represents stillness, it represents singularity, and it represents the center of all things, that axis mundi, right? And it is slowly entering into Cancer. Now, Cancer is very much associated with the labyrinth. Now, the labyrinth is often confused with a maze, right? But they are two separate things. It's said that you can often, lose yourself in a maze. There are all these false turns and all of these dead ends and whatnot. But a labyrinth, a true labyrinth, not like the one in the movie, but a true labyrinth, only has one way in and one way out. And if you keep going towards the center, if you keep spiraling in, you will eventually find that center source. You will eventually find that singular source with the divine. And Cancer is very much our first avenue to that, this inner reality. It represents our doorway to the, much like Carl Jung says here, the archetypal mother is a doorway to the unseen, right? This is a doorway to the great beyond, much like Sirius, smack dab in the middle of Cancer, governs this doorway to the great beyond, the labyrinth of our subconscious, of our traumas. Making friends with the monsters in there is our quest towards that unseen, towards that which we are seeking, right? So these are all, I don't know, little notes and things on my dive into the labyrinth. I guess we'll read through here. This is from the video I did for Cancer Moon, where we dove very heavily into the symbolism of the labyrinth. And it's definitely something I want to add into my book, okay? So in a dictionary of symbols, Surlot says that a labyrinth is an architectonic structure, apparently aimless, and of a pattern so complex that once inside it is impossible or very difficult to escape. Or it may take the form of a garden similarly patterned. He's actually talking about a maze, but we'll get there as we get into this rest of this research. Some are believed to have been conceived with the purpose of luring devils into them so that they might never escape. These shadows, these traumas, these parts of our early programming, right? These the shadow parts of our psyche that reside within our subconscious. It is to be supposed, therefore, that for the primitive, the maze had a certain fascination compared with the abyss, the whirlpool, right? Much like all the stars spinning around the pole star, that's a whirlpool. The whirlpool and other phenomenon, nevertheless. This dude suggests that some circular or elliptical labyrinths in prehistoric engravings should be interpreted as diagrams of heaven itself. That is, as images of the apparent motions of the astral bodies. This notion is not opposed to the previous one. It is independent of and up to a point complementary, because the terrestrial maze, as a structure or a pattern, is capable of reproducing the celestial. And because both allude to the same basic idea, the loss of spirit in the process of creation, that is, the fall in the Neoplatonic sense, and the consequent need to seek out a way through the center back to spirit. Right? So this symbolic terrestrial maze is not only a mirror of this celestial maze, all of the astral bodies, all of the planets, all of the stars, all of the galaxies spinning around themselves doing their thing, right? But it is also a mirror of our inner maze, because as above, so below. We are a reflection of that great whole. So much like we can go out in a maze or a labyrinth and literally walk around until we find the center, right? Much like all of these planets are revolving around a center, the pole star or the galactic center or the great attractor or the super galactic center. There are many different centers depending on which how big of a maze you are looking at, how big of a labyrinth, but we have these within ourselves as well. And Cancer is where this maze, where this labyrinth is mirrored within us, our subconscious. Also your fourth house in your chart, okay? You guys know I'm not going to be able to do any of these names. Oh my God, I'm going to butcher these. All right. There is an illustration in this guy's book from 1672 from Amsterdam, which depicts the sanctuary of the alchemists' lapis, encircled by the orbits of the planets as walls, suggesting this way a cosmic labyrinth. The emblem of the labyrinth was widely used by medieval architects to trace through the labyrinthine path of a mosaic pattern on the ground, and was considered a symbolic substitute for the pilgrimage to the Holy Land, which is ultimately what a lot of those allegories talk about. I heard RFK's speech today, and he was talking about like Moses. And he was talking about Moses, like walking around in the desert for like 40 years, like trying to find the promised land. And all of the Jews following him being like, yo, we should have just stayed in Egypt. We're just following you. Are you ever going to find this thing? And he like walks up on the mountain, and I don't know, Mount Sinai. I don't know which mountain, but he walks up on a mountain. And he's like talking to God, and he's like, yo, like I look, I'm looking out there, I can see the promised land, like, and God's like, well, they have to find it on their own. They can't follow you. You've got them this far. They're right at the edge of the cliff. They just have to look over it. Once they look over it, they see it, then they have to get there on their own. You can only guide them so far. They have to get there on their own. And he talks a lot about not being able to go to the left, not being able to go to the right, and having to go straight ahead to find the promised land, right? It's an allegory. It's an allegory for finding the center of things, finding that singularity, that source before the fall, that source before the split, right? And this we can only find deep within ourselves. In Cancer, the bottom of the chart, the IC, the fourth house, represents our innermost world. It represents where we can find this, right? The pole star right now, which symbolically represents that center, is still over in Gemini, but it's inching closer and closer and closer, and it will get there in 78 years. And I think we're on our path towards finding that singularity within over these next 78 years of our incarnation and our bloodlines incarnation, right? Elaid notes that the essential mission of the maze or the labyrinth was to define the center. That it was, in fact, an initiation into sanctity, immortality, and absolute reality. And as such, equivalent to other trials, such as the fight with the dragon, right? That fourth house, this is where we are faced with our traumas. This is where we are faced with our subconscious. The moon reflects our shadow, right? It reflects our inner reality. This is very much associated with that dragon energy. I find it interesting that in a real labyrinth, which I should have put a picture here. Oh, maybe I should add that. I will add, look up just a picture of like a labyrinth. I wish I had the book here. Okay, here, I do have the book here. Okay, so this is a traditional symbol of a labyrinth. You can see there's only one way in, and if you just keep going, like you will eventually come out the same freaking way. One way in, one way out. You get into the middle and then you come back out and you come back out, okay? This is a traditional symbol of a labyrinth. And now it's said that you can't get lost in a labyrinth as long as you keep going in and looking for the center, as long as you don't stop moving, as long as you don't get caught up on the illusions that might find you along the way. Let me share my screen here. It's said that when you go into a labyrinth, you make a lot more left-hand turns than you make right-hand turns. And it's often said that the right way is the wrong way. Really, if you walk in and you put your hand on the left-hand wall and you just keep walking, you will eventually find your way to the center and find your way out again. So I think that that's interesting, considering the left-handed path is associated with this like self-led quest. The only way you're really going to find the center, right? And the right-handed path will eventually kind of lay you astray because you'll constantly be giving your authority away to some sort of outside force, never going into yourself, never finding your center. Now, you cannot find the center purely going to the left, symbolically, archetypally, but it's definitely that self-led initiatory energy that the left-handed path is associated with that will eventually find you to the center, and integrating that right-hand path as well, right? So like I said before, it's said that you might lose yourself in a maze, but you will always find yourself in a labyrinth, a true labyrinth, because it will bring you to the center of things, right? As long as you don't give up along the way. So in the true sense, the labyrinth is not a system of false paths. That is a maze. Up until the beginning of modern times and beyond, it was a geometrical figure showing only one single and fated path and thus containing no possibility of going astray. It represents the root followed by the dead, and at the same time, a hope of rebirth, returning out of the womb of the mother. I think it's interesting that Cancer is associated both with our early life, the mother and the womb, and that late life as well. It is the same sort of symbolic expression as a mandala. It's considered an open mandala in a double sense. One opening leads both in and out, and the goal is that center, much like the axis mundi, like the pole star, like a lot of this symbolism. It's ultimately what the zodiac is trying to get us to do. The zodiac is a juxtaposition of a bunch of oppositions, a bunch of polarities, a bunch of seemingly paradoxical energies that are going in two different directions, but they're all meant to cohesively meet in the middle. And Cancer has a lot to do with us finding that middle, because it helps us connect to our inner world, which is ultimately where we are meant to find said middle. Okay, Theseus, the guy who goes into the labyrinth in the Greek myth to slay the Minotaur. It says here that he did not need Ariadne's red thread in order to reach the center of the labyrinth, but in order to find his way out. So in this mythology, Ariadne is the princess of the labyrinth, and she gives him a magical thread so that he can find his way out of the labyrinth after slaying the beast in the middle. And I love that it is associated with a woman, and that like thread of the feminine that helps this masculine consciousness find his way out of the abyss ultimately, right? And I dive really deep into this mythology in the video that is supposed to be linked here, but it doesn't look like the hyperlink works. But it is available on Patreon if you're a Patreon follower. But I'll fix the links. I will fix all of the links. Okay. So in this guy's story of that mythology of Theseus and the labyrinth, I did used to know how to say this guy's name. Teclusis? No, that's super wrong. But this is the guy who built the labyrinth. He outfitted the labyrinth with all kinds of things, these narcotic mists, which would cast the visitor into a fantasizing dream world, caught the labyrinth, and in a dream world where they would be caught in a labyrinth of their own fantasies and visions. He could go back out, but he doesn't want to because he has fell into this fantasy realm. I always like to draw parallels to the movie The Labyrinth from the 80s with David Bowie, the Jim Henson movie. I love the plot of that movie because it really speaks to, one, making friends with the monsters, with the Minotaur, with the beasts in the labyrinth, and them actually kind of helping you along your quest. But it also speaks to a lot of these illusions being just that, illusions. And once you see them and you call them out for what they are, they no longer have power over you. So this is very much a mirror realm energy. This is very much the reflections of our mind, and therefore our fantasies, right? And so things can trip us up along the way, and we can get lost in this labyrinth, but as long as we're continuing towards that quest, towards our center, we'll be fine. Okay? In the Mediterranean region, I think this was during like the Minoan period. In the Mediterranean region at that time, there existed a feminine, maternal culture. It was not a male god who ruled the world, but a great goddess, a mother of all life. She remained ever the same, while her partner, so to speak, her constant companion, her beloved in the form of a bull, definitely Minoa, was subjected to the change of the seasons, and thus he died and was resurrected. And it's believed that this is part of the narrative that is tied to the labyrinth, which is a symbol of the womb itself, with the bull or that minotaur being slayed and often reborn, resurrected. So the death and birth took place in the womb of the goddess and the mother, the lover, deep inside the cavern of the labyrinth. The labyrinth is a symbol of the uterus, drawn out long, much like Cancer is associated with the womb. It is 7 times convoluted, like the loops of the intestines or the 7 planetary spheres, the main 7 planets we can see. Among the Hopi Indians today, the labyrinth is still a symbol of Mother Earth, as well as birth and rebirth from her. It has nothing to do with any sort of bull or minotaur or anything like that. All the same, the labyrinth remains today a meaningful symbol of birth, not the physical process, but of a psychic birth, the spiritual entry into the world, a symbol of emancipation, of self-realization. A lot of this happens in the realm of Cancer through that innate intuition, right? Allowing us to move beyond the gates of Saturn, right? Work through our chironic wounds and activate all of the psychic planets beyond that really tap us into this spiritual dimension. Uranus, the Great Awakener, Neptune, that planet of psychic mysticism, Pluto, who plugs us into the mysteries of the great beyond, the fixed stars that activate our cosmic consciousness, the black holes that activate our galactic consciousness, and that are literally holes to the great beyond. They're literally holes in the space-time continuum. We do not know what is on the other side of that star's evolution. We do not know what that's all about, right? But this is the trajectory of it all, and it starts first in Cancer. It starts first in our inner world. We have to make right with Cancer, Capricorn, before we can enter out those gates of Saturn, which oppose it over there in Capricorn. I said we have to make right with Cancer before we can enter out of Capricorn's gates. Okay, we develop, unwind our way out of one womb, and at the same time wind into a new one. It is a departure and an entry simultaneously out of the mother into the womb of the family, into the womb of society, of the earth, of the cosmic realm. What womb are you in? Okay, look, I want to kind of point that out on the chart. So Pisces is the cosmic womb, right? That births Aries, right? Then we move into the womb of Taurus, the womb of Earth, the womb of the physical earthly dimension. That helps to give Gemini the ability to manifest the realm of duality, the realm of consciousness, the realm of intellect. We then move into the womb of Cancer, which then gives us the ability to develop our persona, develop our ego, become a creator, right? And we continue on through there. Okay. Okay, from the Honeycomb Collective, on Cancer, it says, I am encircling arms of the moon in fullness, the embodiment of river currents as they feed and hydrate the shore. I shelter, I protect and preserve, weaving a lineage of tenderness that ripples ever out into the oceanic hearth of my dearest community. So good. Oh my gosh, I just absolutely love these. They're so fabulous. All right, so a little bit on Cancer. My cats are going crazy out there. All right, it's only 10:30. Let's move on. So around the time of 400 BC, the heliacal rising stars for the summer solstice were still in the stars of Leo, giving the sun rulership over this summer sign. However, by about 2000 BC, the stars of Cancer had assumed this role. And although they were faint and dim, Cancer's a really hard constellation to see. Although they were faint and dim, they were an important grouping that had to be acknowledged. It was here that the sun, having reached its southernmost point of rising on the horizon, would turn on its path and begin its journey northward. So when it gets to the point of the summer solstice, it seems to kind of like stand still for about 3 days, and then it starts moving forward again. Like it goes to equinox, to solstice, stand for 3 days, equinox. But it's in a figure 8, and it goes like this. Okay. It was the Chaldeans who officially linked this constellation to the crab, apparently because of this sideways movement of the sun as it entered this constellation on the solstice. So the sun would move in on the solstice, and then it would seemingly go that way. Okay. Because of the sideways movement of the sun as it entered into the constellation. The Egyptians, however, linked the constellation to the scarab beetle, a symbol of immortality, rising from the dead, and settling upon the empty boat of Ra, a place where the sun god was born again, that place in the sky where the sun would stop and then move on again. This may well be the source for later belief that this group of stars was the source of all life, that gate of man, right? And a portal, a place where human souls entered into Earth's material realm through the womb of the mother. In contrast, the stars of Capricorn and the winter solstice were seen as a place of departure and or death, the gate of God, where we're going on to whatever God is, right? Upon our death. Probably through, I'd say, the Galactic Center, which is right there, but who really knows, right? So in later Greek mythology had Dionysus, driven mad by the heat of the sun, taken across a marsh by 2 asses, whom he rewarded by placing them in this constellation. Many years later, the same theme was repeated by the Christians, who called this constellation the manger and the 2 asses, symbolizing the nativity scene of Christian mythology. The constellation of Cancer is often referred to as the manger. I mean, it's very much that womb that holds the child. It makes sense. It also has this beehive cluster in there as well, too, which we'll probably talk about when we get to the galactic section. I don't know how much we'll be able to cover. There's so many points in the sky. I'm going to try to do as much as I can. So as time passed, this faint constellation no longer heralded the summer solstice. The importance of the crab and its mythology faded. Technically, the first stars of Gemini have just now begun to mark this point, really right now. Like the first stars of Gemini are starting to align with the solstice point. And the pole star is only a couple of degrees away from that solstice point. The pole star will mark the point of the summer solstice in the year 2101, which is 78 years from now. From its role as the important gateway of souls, the giver of life, it became a crab. The Greeks said was sent by Hera to help the Hydra, who was in mortal combat with Hercules. Hercules crushed the crab, and Hera, in thanks for the crab's obedience, placed it in the heavens. The Greeks are really great at taking all of the magic out of the mythologies. This area of the sky, like she says, used to be a very important gateway for souls and literally the giver of all life. And then it got just demoted to this obedient crab who did Hera's vindictive bidding and then got placed in the sky as a thank you for it. Like, I don't really vibe with that narrative, that myth, right? All right, so here I have broken down the three main wombs that we have in the zodiac. The three water signs, which are innately feminine, innately associated with the womb, right? And the three consciousnesses that are birthed from them 9 months later, which just so happen to be our three fire signs, okay? So I think maybe we talked about this in the last video, but I'm going to touch on it again. We have Cancer here, which literally is associated with the womb itself. Cancer, at a 9-month gestation period from Cancer, starting in Cancer, brings us to Aries. So Cancer is very much associated with that birth of Aries just as much as Pisces is. And Aries is very much associated with our base level consciousness, our reptilian consciousness, our primal life force consciousness. Now, Scorpio is our next water sign. 9 months after Scorpio, the realm of the mysteries, the realm of transformation. 6 months after Scorpio season, we have Leo season. Leo is associated with our egoic solar consciousness, right? As we transform through Scorpio death and personal initiations, and we plug into the mysteries, we can start to align more with that like solar consciousness. But we have to face our ego along the way, because with that comes the expression of identity and therefore our ego, right? Now, our third water sign is Pisces. Pisces births our final fire sign. Pisces at a 9-month gestation period brings us to Sagittarius, which is literally the realm of higher consciousness, expansive, philosophical consciousness. It's mutable, so it's starting to shift us into something else, something in the great beyond. Sag doesn't even know what it is. It's on a freaking quest. It's on an adventure, right? And this is aligned with the Galactic Center, that source of galactic consciousness. It's also aligned with Ophiuchus, who helps to activate that galactic consciousness through finding the center, the axis mundi, which is represented by the Galactic Center, the center of our galaxy, and the pole star, which sits in exact opposition to it, the center of this whole thing we're doing here on Earth. All right, let's move into Leo. We'll talk about this all more here when we get into these signs, but we're gonna move on to Leo. Hopefully we can get the next 3 signs done, Leo and Virgo. All right, so Leo is our second fixed sign. While Cancer starts the season of summer, Leo sits mid-summer or mid-winter if you are in the southern hemisphere. And so it is fixed energy, it is fixed fire. While Aries is the spark that unites, it burns quick, but it lacks longevity. Leo has that longevity. It's much like the sun, its ruling planet, a burning planet of plasma that continues in this steadfast manner to burn and burn and burn and burn in a fixed manner, right? It is obviously the fire element, and it is of that yang, masculine, positive polarity. It is associated with the lion. It has pretty much always been associated with the lion, depending on, all of the different cultures look at this area of the sky as a lion, which is often rare because, there's different narratives here and there, but lion through and through. All right, here's a quote from Robert Hand. With Leo, the basic structure of the individual entity is complete. This is clear in that Leo is a sign of the developed ego and self-confidence, with strong needs for self-expression, admiration, and uncompromising personal integrity. Leo is governed by the sun. It is the planet of consciousness, identity, objective reality, ego, willpower, creativity, vitality, and purpose. It's associated with the house of creative instincts, with the urge to express oneself, with children, with the heart and how one gives or loves affection, with romance and pleasure and hobbies and talents and play and manifestation. This energy is creative, it's generous, it's enthusiastic, it's a good organizer, it's broad-minded, expansive, it's a leader, it's confident. It has longevity, like the sun. It's going to burn and burn and burn for at least another 4.5 billion years, right? It is egotistical because it governs our persona, our identity, our ability to express the individual at its fullest, right? Therefore, this energy can tend sometimes to be quite vain or proud or said to be bullying or stubborn. All of the fixed signs are stubborn. It's part of their brilliance. But it can be very intolerant of others or dogmatic or patronizing or domineering, much like the sun. It dominates the solar system. Everything revolves around it. And Leos tend to think everything revolves around them. And you know what? Oftentimes it does because they're so charismatic. And they're natural born leaders that are meant to guide and lead and shine. Now, sometimes they can take that and use it in a manipulative way. So as long as they're manifesting from a centered heart space, they can be brilliant leaders and guides for the rest of us. Now, Aries is associated with our reptilian brain, that spark, that primal instinct. Taurus is associated with our body. Gemini is associated with more of that mammalian brain where we get a little like intelligence but no emotional depth, right? So Cancer is associated with like our mammalian brain, while Cancer is associated with like our prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that only like we humans and dolphins have, the one that is believed to make us psychic and emotionally intelligent people. It also gives us the ability to speak. But the prefrontal cortex gives us the ability to connect compassionately with others. But Cancer, so Aries, the primal spark in our reptilian brain. Cancer, the body, so that spark can manifest. Gemini, the mammalian brain. Cancer, the prefrontal cortex. And then Leo represents all of the above, expressing as an ego, as a personality, which needs to evolve through interactions with the world or others, right? Which is what's developed through the rest of the zodiac. All right, so herbs that are associated with Leo are bay, chamomile, frankincense, juniper, and rosemary. In the world, Leo is associated with royalty, the royal family, the elite, which you guys know I don't call the elite. I call them the powers that want to be. Like, I need to change that on here. The powers that want to be. A nation's creative activities, art and culture, ceremonies, children, the birth rate, the stock market, and national lotteries. In the body, Leo is associated with the heart, our upper back, our spine, the circulation, and our blood pressure. In this tropical sign, we have stars in Draco. There's actually stars of Draco in many, many, many signs because Draco circles the celestial pole. And up at the pole is where all 12 of the segments of the zodiac meet up here at the pole star. And Draco circles the celestial pole. So he kind of falls in a lot of these little segments, one of them being Leo. So we have Draco, we have Ursa Major, which is the great bear, the divine mother, who circles the pole star, which is the divine child. The tail of the pole star is the tail of the baby bear. And Ursa Major is the mama bear that circles the pole star, guarding it. It falls within the sign of Leo and Virgo, the mother, the Virgin Mother. We have stars in the Hydra here, and then we also, depending on when you were born, Regulus may or may not be in Leo. It was at 29 degrees of Leo for quite some time. So everybody born before 2012 will have Regulus at 21 degrees of Leo, but in 2012, Regulus moved into Virgo. Regulus is the heart of the lion. It is one of the 4 royal fixed stars of Persia, and it is one of the stars we will be talking about in depth when we get to the fixed star section. Now, esoterically, Leo, okay, well, at least this is balanced. He didn't say very much about Cancer, but then the sign ruled by the moon, but he also didn't say much about Leo. So fair is fair, I guess. All right, so the 5th sign, Leo is the 5th sign of the zodiac. It corresponds to solar power, the will, fire, and the clear penetrating light, which passes from the threshold of Gemini into the subconscious intuitive realm of Cancer. It is connected with feelings and emotions. All right. Ooh, Lord. That's Gemini. All right. So this next section here is all a lovely Bernadette Brady's research on the constellation of Leo. You guys know I'm a big fan of her work. We cite her many, many times throughout this PDF. She's fabulous. If I could recommend one book to you guys, it is definitely her book on fixed stars. The Bernadette Brady's Fixed Stars over her star and planet combination, which is also good, but it's a lot of stuff repeated from the Fixed Star book, and the Fixed Star book has more, so get the Fixed Star book. Okay. Bernadette Brady's Fixed Stars. It's on a stack, big stack here. If I try to get it, I'm going to knock over a whole bunch of books. Okay, so around 6000 to 3000 BC, the stars of Leo were the rising stars of the summer solstice. Recognized as a lion by the Persians, the Syrians, the Babylonians, and the Egyptians, and then later the Turks and the Jews, the constellation seems to have been seen as a lion from the beginning of the cultivation of civilization, probably because it was seen as a lion all the way back in Atlantis, and all of these different civilizations were probably echoes of that time. It was leftover information that survived the deluge ultimately. And I use Atlantis as a catch-all term for a pre-Diluvian world. There were cultures that spanned the globe that were all destroyed simultaneously, right? Now, the earliest known use of the lion as a symbol appears to be Sekhmet. Sekhmet? I never know how to pronounce her name. But she is the sister of Hathor of the Egyptian pantheon. She was a sphinx lioness, symbolizing wrathful destruction and an active aggressor against her father's enemies. Her father is Ra. She sat beside Ra and poured forth blazing fire that scorched and consumed his enemies. At all times in the Egyptian pantheon, the lion was linked with the goddess. Aggressive, assertive, known by many titles and names as the Lady of the Flame, or the Great Lady, or the Holy One, or the Powerful One. So I find this so interesting because we obviously, Leo is a fire sign. It is of the yang polarity. It is ruled by the sun. It is more often than not associated with a masculine archetypal expression. But the Egyptians did not see it that way. They saw this as a profoundly vengeful, ravenous, feminine force, right? So this area of the sky is connected to the ancient period and the flooding of the Nile. So therefore it is connected to fertility, to the goddess, and to water. The Egyptians saw the lion as a guardian of water, as a guardian of the goddess herself. A belief still echoed today in fountains which use the lion's head as a front. By 2043 BC, the lion lost his tuft of hair, his little tuft on the end of his tail, which was later redefined as Coma Berenice. This is the wig constellation, which was placed in the sky in ancient Alexandria, which is in more ancient zodiacs, is often seen as a divine mother constellation holding her son, holding a divine child. This is something we'll talk about when we get to fixed stars. But if you're a Patreon member, I know you've heard me talk about this before because we've talked about this before. But the tuft of the lion's tail is sometimes associated with this constellation. Sometimes it's associated with this wig. Both the Egyptian and the Greek cultures claim that they were the ones who got rid of the tuft and made it the wig, or got rid of the divine mother and the desired son and made it a wig. The Egyptians probably did it with, I don't know exactly how it went down. I don't know. We have to look more into that, who claimed which one. All right, so the Greeks and the Romans associated Leo with the lion Nemean, the lion that Hercules killed. This lion was no ordinary beast, but a grandchild of Gaia, the goddess of the earth. He was a grandchild of Gaia, Mother Earth, and the child of a destroying moon goddess. Remnants of the destroying sun goddess of the Egyptians. But by this period, the moon, not the sun, was associated with the goddess. He was a giant, magical lion, impenetrable to the masculine weapons of sword and spear. In Greek mythology, this lion laid waste to the countryside around the town of Nemean. One of Hercules' labors, the 12 labors of Hercules are literally about the zodiac and his quest through it. And one of these labors, associated with Leo, was to kill this lion. After his weapon proved ineffective, he cornered the beast, wrapped his arms around its back, and squeezed the lion to death. This really speaks to that like ego death, right? It is possible to think of the lion, the grandchild of Gaia, as a representative of the matrilineal culture and its activities around the town of Nema, implying that the worship of the goddess or practice of non-Zeus, non-patriarchal centered religion was still active in that area. Hercules, whose main duty seemed to be to destroy all the symbols of the older religion, was sent out to root out these pagans. In the same manner that the Christian church in the Middle Ages killed 9 million men and women, mostly in the countryside, because these people were supposed to believe in an older religion, right? Later, the Romans imported the symbol of the lion to Britain, where it was portrayed on their coins as a lion led by a woman. We see this today in the strength card, and we also see this in the, it says here, once again, this is an echo of an older Egyptian symbol of the lion goddess. And in the ancient Egyptian zodiac, we see Virgo, which sits right by Leo, guiding the lion. Virgo and Leo are innately connected. It is the maiden and the lion. We saw the Virgin and the Lion as two constellations, not only physically wed together, but also mythologically. She is known as in Britain as the Lady who rules lions, and became a symbol of early divinity. By the end of the Dark Ages, the lion was used as a symbol of sovereignty in Britain, and by the 12th century was the only animal shown on the Anglo-Norman shields. To the Christians, this constellation was the lion who Daniel faced in his den, or often seen as the Christ child himself. According to Christian astrology and the book Witness of the Stars, the zodiac starts in Virgo and it ends with Leo, according to this Christian narrative, right? It goes on to say that the Messiah's consummated triumph, and this quote, "Here we come to the end of the circle. We began with Virgo and we end with Leo. No one who has followed our interpretation can doubt that we have here solving the riddle of the Sphinx, for its head is in Virgo and its tail in Leo." So he argues that the Sphinx is a symbolic representation of the zodiac itself, with its head in Virgo, a woman, head of a lady, and its tail in Leo. Astronomer Bailey says, quote, "The zodiac must have been first divided when the sun at the summer solstice was at 1 degree of Virgo, where the woman's head joins the lion's tail." There is no confusion about this sign. The ancient zodiacs of Egypt and of India, we find the lion, always the lion. In the Dhendra zodiac, he is treading upon a serpent. What we actually see is the constellation of the Hydra, which is a serpent type of looking thing. The lion riding the Hydra, the serpent, being guided by Virgo. And then underneath, we actually have the crater. Oh, we have it here. Okay, well, I'll just read this. Okay, so the lion is the tribe of Judah. His feet are standing over the head of the Hydra, which is the serpent that wounded Chiron. It is the Hydra's venom. It's actually Hercules who wounded Chiron, accidentally shooting him with his arrows. Sometime he wasn't trying to shoot him, he was trying to shoot a centaur, but he accidentally wounded Chiron, and that arrow was dipped in the Hydra's blood. But anyway, Leo, the lion, is sitting on top of the Hydra, the serpent. In Christian mythology, this is the old world serpent that has destroyed that pagan belief, right? There's also the crater down there as well. The Christians look at this as a cup of wrath that is poured out upon them. I tend to look at it as this holy grail. It is over there by Virgo, the Virgin Mother, and it is over there by Leo, the divine child, right? And there's also Corvus, the bird of prey, which devours him. All here in that same area of the sky, all sitting right down below the constellation of Leo. So the Egyptian zodiac picture exhibits all four of these constellations in one. The lion is literally riding the serpent. The lion presented is treading down on the serpent. The bird of prey is also perched upon it. Sometimes it's like sitting on his butt. While below is a plumed female figure holding out two cups, answering to the crater and the cup of wrath. Okay. Oh, oops. Okay. According to Babylonian astrology, the zodiac constellation of Leo has its ultimate origins in the ancient Babylonian constellation of the Lion. The only difference being is that the great lion, its full name, is normally portrayed with a set of wings, no doubt to emphasize its celestial nature. In astrological texts, the regent of the lion is named as the minor god Lactarak. Sure. He is a lion-headed being who gives the impression of being a protective figure, more akin to a beneficial demon than a god. He is sometimes seen with his characteristic whip in an ancient art. We also see that in the Egyptian zodiac, where there's sometimes a woman standing behind the lion with like a whip or like a stick, like helping to kind of like guide it and make it go, much like the feminine psyche helps to guide subconsciously or unconsciously our masculine psyche, Leo, the sun, right? Okay. So in astrological text, the region of the lion is named for this minor god Latrak. He is a lion-headed being who gives the impression of being a protective figure, more akin to a beneficial demon than a god. He is sometimes seen with his characteristic whip in ancient art, and this may be related to the image on the square zodiac at Dhendra, which shows a goddess with a whip holding on to the tail of the lion. Regardless of its attributes to this minor god, the lion is especially associated with Inanna and Ishtar. Sometimes this goddess is simply known as the Lioness of Heaven. Mythic texts reveal that her temple throne was supported by a pair of lions. But more often than not, Inanna could be found on the battlefield, where her roar of her sacred lion pronounced war, much like that Egyptian myth, right? The lion, the dog of Ishtar, roared and did not stop roaring. That's a quote from a Babylonian text. Inanna's lust for war and carnage is frequently praised in Sumerian literature. Many of her warlike attributes are recorded in Sumerian poems. Inanna and the Mountain of Ib, which recounts the goddess's destruction of a mountain realm and refused to submit to her will. The poem praises her as the Lady of Battle, who is clad in terror and drenched in blood. She destroys mighty lands with the arrow and overwhelms the lands with her strength. Think of Leo, it's fixed fire, fire that burns and burns and burns. That imbalance will destroy, right? In astrology, Inanna's sacred planet is Venus. As the morning star and the evening star, it represents her rise and her descent. Inanna's myth is a lot like Persephone. She is the goddess of heaven and hell. And Venus as the morning and evening star is symbolic of her ascension and her descent. So in astrology, Inanna's sacred planet is Venus. In fact, the association of Venus and the lion is so close that she is regarded as having her second exaltation of her secret place in the lion, meaning Venus really likes to be in Leo, so much so that it's often seen as Venus's second exaltation. Venus is exalted in Pisces, meaning it likes to be in Pisces even more so than it likes to be in its home sign of Libra or Taurus. When the sign that a planet is exalted in is a sign where it can express itself to its fullest. What Venus is expressing in Pisces is high levels of spiritual love, right? Every planet has a sign where it is exalted and where it's considered to be at fall, like it doesn't really like to be there. We'll talk about those when we get to the planets. Now, it's said that Venus's secret other place of exaltation is Leo, because it really does love to be in Leo. Leo governs romance and passion. So, of course, Venus would love to be there, right? So, in Babylonian thought, the lion's character is dominated by three major themes. As a killer of man and livestock, the lion symbolizes destruction of the flocks and the carnage of war. In a regal context, the lion often represents the king in his aspect of a ferocious warrior. In a seasonal context, the lion represents the solar power unleashed over high summer, which causes death and drought. And then I added this one, the primordial goddess, or her son, the sun, depending on who's kind of telling the story, right? It could be the king, it could be the goddess, it could be the sun. So the king star, which is a star located in the breast of the lion, this is Regulus. In Babylonian tradition, the star, which makes its direct precursor of our modern star named Regulus, this is the heart of the lion, it means the little king. On one of the Babylonian star lists, it was named Marduk as the region of the star. So like how we have in like the Western tradition, like the Hellenistic or Greek or traditional astrology, we have like Jupiter and Neptune. These are gods named after planets. In the Babylonian tradition, they have that for the planets, but then they also have a lot of certain stars that are associated with certain deities, right? So the star in Leo the lion, which we know as Regulus, they knew as the king star. It means the little king, and they associated it with their god Marduk. He was the regent of the star. His attribution is indeed appropriate, as Marduk is regarded as the king of the gods, much like Leo the sun, the king of all the planets here, right? He was the patron god of Babylon, and as the city rose in political power through the course of the second millennium, so did Marduk. He rose through the ranks of the pantheon from being the patron of a city-state to a god of national and then international importance. The Epic of Creation ultimately regards him as the supreme God, the creator of the world order, and further emphasizes his lordship over all other gods by postulating that many ancient deities were in fact merely aspects of his divine personality. So he's represented as the Godhead, right? That all others are fractals of. Much like, the sun is associated with our solar consciousness. On the other hand, according to Hellenistic astrological and divination texts, they attribute the king star to the goddess Nigal, which they call the Lady of the Palace. This title is often applied to Inanna. Ritual texts also use this name to refer to Inanna in her role as the bride in the ceremony of the sacred marriage. In this rite, the goddess marries the king, who impersonates her mythic consort. Their union not only brings fertility, alignment with the goddess always brings fertility. This is a lot of the lessons we learn in the Arthurian legends, particularly the legend of the Fisher King. Kingdoms crumble and kings die if they are not connected to the goddess and therefore that energy of fertility itself. Their union not only brings fertility to the land and the herds, but it also establishes the king's preeminent position among his peers. She literally makes kings. So interesting that this is all playing out here in the sign of Leo, which is associated with royalty, with kings, with that lineage, right? So giving the long-standing association with Inanna, with the lion, this attribute may therefore reflect an older tradition. Somewhat paradoxically, the lion is also regarded as the great enemy. Much like our ego can be our friend, our personality, our persona can be our friend or our enemy, right? In this vein, the king performs the sacred duty of the royal lion hunt. Indeed, it appears that slaying the lion was the sole prerogative of kings. In astrology, the king star was exclusively used as a name for Jupiter, the king of the planets. Okay, so according to Theosophical Astrology, oh wait, no, this is just a little link to the Theosophical Astrology breakdown of Leo, if you want to come and watch it or read it. This is on alchemy and the symbol of the lion, esoterically speaking, okay? So the lion corresponds principally to gold, or to the subterranean sun, and really to the sun itself. Hence, it is found as a symbol of sun gods such as Mithras, Christ. The lion in alchemy corresponds to the fixed element, much like Leo is a fixed sign. The lion in alchemy corresponds to the fixed element, to sulfur. When counterbalanced by 3 other animals, it represents earth. Although elsewhere it has been said that it stands for philosophical fire. While gold is given the name lion of metals, the red-colored lion, sometimes we see the lion as green or red, depending on the alchemical art we're looking at, but when we see it as a red color, the red color lion is more strictly applicable to the later, to this metal lion, right? When counterbalanced by 3 other animals, it represents earth. Although elsewhere it has been said that it stands for philosophical fire. While gold is given the name lion of metals, the red-colored lion is more strictly applicable to the later, that philosophical fire, right? But apart from these considerations, which lie more in the province of the theory of correspondence than in proper symbology, the lion, the king of the beasts, or sometimes the lioness, this is something I wrote for a Leo moon. Let's go ahead and read what it says here. Okay. So symbolically, the lion, the king of the beasts, or really it's the lioness, if we look back into Babylonian or Egyptian mythology, it's a lioness. And it's because in the Lion Kingdom, the lioness is a badass. The lioness is really the badass in the animal kingdom. The lion, much like the patriarchal gods, they just fuck and eat. But it's the lioness, it's the women that rule. He is merely a consort, or often they're the sons of a lioness, but it's the lioness who hunt. This energy symbolizes the earthly, the opponent of the eagle in the sky, and the natural lord and master, or the possessor of strength and of the masculine principle. The motif of the solar lion, which tears out the throat of the lunar bull, is repeated endlessly in Asiatic and African mythology. So often, like, we see this in alchemical depictions too, like the lion devouring the sun, which speaks to an ego death, or an alchemical transformation of consciousness, a death and rebirth. And then we also see a motif of this like solar lion devouring this lunar bull. This could be symbolic of daytime, rising once more in the dawn and slaying the darkness of night each time the sun rises, right? The solar lion devours the lunar bull, okay? According to Schneider, the lion pertains to the element of earth and the winged lion to the element of fire. Both are symbolic of continual struggle, solar light, mourning, regal dignity, and victory. The young lion is associated with this rising sun, and the old wise lion is associated with the setting sun. For Carl Jung, the lion in its wild state is broadly speaking an index of dormant passions. Leo, the sign of the lion, literally governs our passions, our hobbies, our joys, which can destroy us if laid dormant. We have to express ourselves creatively. We have to find avenues to express our passions, right? For Jung, the lion in its wild state is broadly speaking an index of dormant passions. It may also take the form of a sign indicating the danger of being devoured by the unconscious. But this latter sense goes beyond lion's symbolism as such, being related to general symbolism of devouring, which in turn is related to the general symbolism of time. The last line, and in Latin, he writes, "The wild lioness is a symbol of magna mater," which is the great mother. And then I linked a couple of articles here on the lion and the alchemy of the soul, alchemical symbolism, and different animal symbolism within alchemy that dives very heavily into the lion if you'd like to dive into that a little bit deeper. If you have strong Leo placements in your chart, I would definitely recommend checking those out. They look like they are active links. All right, so we're going to close out with this, and we're going to save Virgo for next time because the Virgo entry here is very long. I did a deep dive into Virgo here, so I guess we'll save that for next time. So we got two signs in, but it is what it is. We're going deep, you guys. We're trying to cover all the things. I want to cover all the depths of research I've done on each of these signs, and I want to have this all compiled in this PDF. This is literally the bones of my book, right? Okay, so the honeycomb little Ophelia entry for Leo is beautiful. It says, I am the tuning fork that entrains the world into a tone of luminous expression. My aura is a mane of tameless dreams, generous surprises, and theatrical spontaneity. If ever a heart goes unseen, it is my volition to uplift it to my side in a place of respect and shining valor. All right, guys, we will pick up with Virgo. I am going to be going out of town with my mom and my sister to go see Peter Gabriel, who I freaking love, and I'm very excited to go see in concert. So I'm going to be gone. So I'm not going to be able to record the next part of this until, I don't know, it looks like probably like the 19th, somewhere between the 19th and the 21st. So I know everybody is really far behind. Everybody's trying to catch up after Mercury retrograde. So if you happen to make it this far in the video and you're hearing me say these words, just know it'll be sometime next week that I get to the next entry here in this. The goal was to have this be a 6-month course. I had all the dates planned out, and it looks like it wants to be bigger. So I don't know. The schedule's kind of been thrown out the window. I'm just gonna roll with it. I'm gonna just see how big each one wants to be. If the PDFs are massive, like this is 47 pages long, it's definitely gonna have to be done in intervals. So we will pick back up next week with Virgo, and we'll cover some more of the zodiac, and we'll probably have to have a couple more entries before we get to the planets. And then when I do schedule the next study sessions, which will not be until we finish all of the signs, all of the houses, all of the planets. Once we finish all of that, which will be however long it needs to be, then I will make sure to email everybody with at least a week or two notice, letting them know when these study sessions will be. And I want to schedule 2 in a row where we will be pulling charts and like putting this to use, right? We're really covering the bulk of the information right now. And then we're going to put this into use. Then we're going to blast out into space, and then we're going to put that into use. All right. All right, guys, thank you for being here. I am so excited, like revisiting all of this information that I've been like compiling over years is really so fun because I forget a lot of this. I really do. And I'm like, oh yeah, it really helps me to just piece it all together and then deliver it to you and expand upon it. I'm really honored that you all are here and learning along with me. So have a great night or day or morning or whatever time it is that you watch this, and I will see you guys next week, and we will pick up with Virgo, which is often seen as a very humdrum, mundane sign, but I'm going to show you how it is one of the most profound signs, and it is literally a mirror of the whole. It is profound, and we're going to dive into it from this Virgo rising. All right, guys, have a good one, and I will see you later.